Hey everyone, welcome to Flywheel Pod, your number one source for everything Frax, DeFi, and everything in between. If you want to know what's going on in the world on chain, you've come to the right place. This is DeFi Dave here with capital K, and we're here to help you harness the power of the flywheel and talk about a very novel way to participate in the flywheel. We're talking about on-chain options, and we had on the GammaSwap team. We had on Daniel and Devin. And that was a meaty podcast. That was very dense. It was so novel. Like what they're building is like on-chain options, doesn't use oracles. Like the design decisions they made, everything like in between, like how they built the product and now they're in testnet. Kiet, what were your thoughts on this episode?
I am very, very impressed by Daniel and obviously Devin too. And it's just, this is a very complex product. And, Daniel comes from a quant background. So I feel, what's the other word? I feel very comfy that GammaSwap is in his hand, that he's the one kind of leading the dev side and the technical side.
Yeah.
And it just a quick caveat to the listeners, bust out a notepad. This one was rough, even for me. Yeah, you hear me ask the same question a couple times.
Yeah, and don't be afraid or don't feel ashamed if you're like, I have no fucking idea what's going on. Because I was like that for like a very solid amount of the episode. I mean, I've looked into options before because I think it's, one of the parts of DeFi that hasn't really reached its full potential. And so it's like, okay, what it's going to look like. And I have my ideas and thesis about it. And GammaSwap's approach to building on-chain options and, the whole idea of impermanent gain. Who doesn't love that? After a whole year of getting wrecked by IL, why can't we get an iDub,
An iDub.
An iDub.
Yeah. I like that. I like that. And what's really unique about GammaSwap is they're not just options, right? They are building kind of like this very middleware, this lubricant that's going to make DeFi just run better. That's what's exciting.
Yeah. And I think this is what's going to attract more sophisticated traders on chain, because if they see these types of primitives built, they can perform actions that they couldn't have on. Yeah, they could hedge. They could literally hedge. Name of the game. Yeah. And if you want to keep up with everything that we're talking about here at Flywheel Pod, make sure you hit that bell button right now. Hit it right now. Get all the notifications. Subscribe. Make sure you leave a comment. Let us know how confused you were. Maybe you got everything and understood everything in this episode. Let us know. Hit that like button. We're here every week. We appreciate your support. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at FlywheelPod. Join our Telegram at FlywheelPod. Hit me up on Twitter at DeFi Dave 22.
And you can hit me up at 0xcapital_K.
And let's get the flywheel spinning. Oh, this is going to wrap around. Do you hold ETH but don't know what to do with it? Want to earn those juicy liquid staking derivative yields but don't know where to start? Well, FrxETH is there for you. FrxETH is Frax's native LSD solution, allowing you to earn boosted yields in multiple ways on your ETH. If you want to get started, go to app.frax.finance and turn your ETH into FrxETH today. All right, everyone. On this special episode, we get into the Greek letters. We get to the deltas, the alphas, the betas, the sigmas, and of course, the gammas. This time around, we have GammaSwap. We have the co-founders of GammaSwap, Devin and Daniel on. Guys, thanks for coming on. It's really exciting to have you guys on here. I've seen a lot of quality threads, not from threadors, but from people actually in DeFi. And people that are living on chain talking about GammaSwap. And I think it's probably one of the most exciting projects I've seen in a while. And I think I've been curious about it, Devin, since we met down at DevCon several months ago. So it's cool to get you guys on. I think this is your guys' first podcast I've seen, and you guys have a lot of a lot to announce coming up. So thanks for coming on, guys. Super excited for this one.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to be here. Happy to talk.
Yeah. So, just to get this started, can you give a little bit of an intro about who you guys are and how you guys started working on GammaSwap? Where did the idea come from and everything?
Yeah, I can quickly intro myself, and then I'll let Daniel introduce himself and how he came up with GammaSwap. But yeah, Devin here, one of the co-founders, helping out with growth and operations. So been involved with crypto since 2016. Did a little bit of the sex arbitrage and the kimchi premium. And then yeah, after graduating, there wasn't much work in crypto, unfortunately. So joined some Web2 companies. The first company I worked for was like a YC company doing SaaS billing management. Then I worked for another company that was helping other SaaS companies manage their software spend and
YC and
usage.
SaaS. What name a more iconic duo?
Yeah. Yeah, so I actually don't have a TradeFi background. I have more of the DeFi degen background, which I think is good because Daniel's super quantitative and I can kind of go into the UI and be like, nope, it's not degen enough. Um, but yeah, so basically worked at those two and then just felt like crypto was really taking off. And so kind of went full time. I was working on a couple projects, doing some trading. And then most recently, I was at a proof of stake infrastructure provider, Figment. I was helping out with some of the partnerships and developer relations as well. I was helping judge a hackathon in Miami, actually, Activate X Wormhole. This was May. So I met the GammaSwap guys, really impressed with what they were doing. I used to LP a little bit and kind of stopped. I would only do it on like new chains or completely new pools, just because impermanent loss had become such an issue. So at first I wanted to join on as an advisor, and then as I met the team and saw the long-term vision, decided to kind of come on full-time. So that's my story.
Yeah, so I used to be an equity trader at a bank in New York. That was over 10 years ago already. So then I moved to another bank where I worked in a risk trading team, and that was until 2016. Although I have been involved in crypto since 2013. That's when I first started buying Bitcoin, mining Bitcoin, or other cryptocurrencies. And in 2016, I left the bank. The bank started getting strict with our trading on the side of cryptocurrencies. So yeah, so I didn't want to have to always be reporting my trades to the bank. Thought it was too intrusive. So I left the bank and started running my own strategies. And I did that from 2016. Well, pretty much until I moved to Florida. That was when I lived in New York. So in 2020, I was providing liquidity in Uniswap, and well, I had longs in Ethereum and Bitcoin, which I didn't want to sell at the time, and there was this new contract, Uniswap V2, and that was paying high yields, like 100,000% APY. So I was doing that for a while, but then by the end of the year, they weren't that profitable anymore. A lot of the opportunities were gone, so I wanted to take the opposite side of the trade. Well, just to back up a little bit, I first did some analysis on the main Uniswap V2 pools, like ETH and USDC, to see what was the expected return on those pools, and I came to the conclusion that it was negative. So if it's negative, then if I take the other side of that trade, it will be positive. So that's what got me into trying to figure this out, into how to build a platform where I can short liquidity inside a Uniswap V2 pair pool. So yeah, so then I mean the rest is history. Where we are now.
It's you basically were LPing in Uniswap V2. You realized it was an unprofitable endeavor, and you simply thought of, what if I just flipped it? What would the opposite be of LPing in Uniswap V2? What would be the opposite in LPing in Uniswap V3? And that's really how GammaSwap came about.
Right.
Okay, cool. And so can you explain for people that aren't familiar, like, what is GammaSwap? Can you, in like, explain it like I'm 5 fashion, like what is Gamma?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all right. I guess if you don't know anything about Uniswap or providing liquidity, anything like that, you can think of it as a way to make money when the price of crypto is moving around a lot. So if crypto moves around a lot, you're making money. If it's not moving around a lot, you're not making money. And that's what the GammaSwap enables you to do. So if you know what a Uniswap V2 is, then you're probably familiar with the concept of impermanent loss. So then in that case, you can think of GammaSwap as a way to turn impermanent loss into impermanent gain. So when the price changes, you make money. and instead of you getting paid fees, you pay the fees. So yeah, so that's, I think, the simplest explanation I can come up with.
Yeah, and in terms of the whole philosophy around impermanent loss, our producer Sam wrote an article saying that pretty much questioned the philosophy of impermanent loss. Like, is impermanent loss real? Is it a real thing, or is it just like a way to perceive like market movements as an LP? Is there another way to view LPing other than impermanent loss? And like from that view, is that how you build GammaSwap?
No. So all right. So the people that say that impermanent loss is not real is because they see that if the price comes back to where it originally was, then there is no loss. So like there's divergence only. I mean, this loss only happens when there is divergence. When the price returns to where it was initially, there is no loss. So then there was this other concept that's been around also called the loss versus rebalancing, which is taken as a running cost of providing liquidity in something like Uniswap. So, but the thing is that and loss versus rebalancing is measuring the same thing. Every risky asset has a drift. Just because it's an interest rate, the time value of money. So everything that's risky is going to have a risky component and a risk-free component. That risk-free component is based on time. So, and that risk-free component is the source of drift. Even if your risky asset doesn't have any positive returns, say it has negative returns, it's still that risk-free component is still there because you're locking up capital that's not being used. It's going to be you're going to get it in the future. So that's still there. And for that reason, regardless of whatever you think if impermanent loss is real or not, time is going to pass, and that drift is going to affect your risky assets.
Hold up. What's drift exactly? What's the definition
drift,
of drift?
So drift is just that the asset is just moving in one direction over time. It's in the geometric Brownian motion formula. So like every asset is measured having a drift, which is actually it's a fairly accurate description. Because there's such a thing as the interest rate that accumulates on any capital that's being locked up over a period of time. So what I'm saying is that if you provide liquidity, so you're locking up your capital in a pool, over time, the price is going to change because it's going to drift regardless, because there's an interest rate on everything. There's no free lunch. So you're going to experience impermanent loss.
Yeah, there's no free lunch. And in that regard, who's actually making money LPing on Uniswap? Like we saw, studies that came out with Uniswap V3. LPs, the majority of them are quite unprofitable. It seems like Uniswap V3 is basically unprofitable to the max compared to Uniswap V2 because of the ranges. Like people, since it's range bound, people get impermanent loss so much faster. So like, is anybody making money with Uniswap V3? Is that a thing?
Well,
if I could touch on the.
Okay. Do you want to touch on that?
Let me just touch on the last part. No,
Yeah.
I want to touch on the last part actually about permanent loss. I mean, Daniel's the quant here, and I'm kind of the more marketing growth guy. But I think it was the most genius marketing play by Uniswap to call like an actual loss impermanent. I mean, like if you're selling volatility in like a normal options market, and then it returns to the price that you like bought the asset at, yeah, it's impermanent. I guess there's expiries which change that. But it's just a way to reframe it to make it seem kind of like this less risky investment because all the losses are impermanent. The price could always go back to what it was, but
yeah,
I mean that's
we
true
come
for
back.
any position.
Yeah, that's true.
You could buy Solana at 250, and then I guess your loss is impermanent if it goes back to 250. But like, what does that mean?
It means a lot of heartache and headache. That's what it means to get there.
I never thought about it like that. Yeah, they just rebranded paper loss into impermanence loss. And then you never close the trade. You never really realize it.
If you don't close, you don't lose. Yeah.
I mean, I think what Uniswap built was genius, but I think the way they marketed it was just as genius, if not more genius.
Yeah, which is... more than half the battle is getting the narrative and messaging right about your product, which leads me to actually just a question I thought of now. Like, how's GammaSwap going about marketing GammaSwap to DeFi degens and everyone alike?
Oh, actually, before we jump into that, could we cover who is actually making money on the Uniswap LP first, so a high level?
Yeah.
And then we'll
dive into
GammaSwap.
Let's do that.
No,
I'll cover the
okay.
marketing after Daniel answers.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So, all right. So, prior to Uniswap V3, there was Uniswap V2 was a more popular platform. So, back then, there were liquidity mining contracts where you could provide liquidity in these pools, even if the risk was high. Just the fact you could pay so much made it worth it. Then those contracts disappeared. There weren't that many contracts that were providing those types of returns through liquidity mining. So if you had an arrangement with some protocol that's paying you enough to provide liquidity, then it made it worthwhile. Then came out Uniswap V3 with the ranges, and yeah, right. So if it moves out, you're not even earning anything, and you're just experiencing the loss on it. But because Uniswap V3 allows you to leverage the liquidity that you provide into it, the tighter that you make the range, then it became optimal to make it the most profitable to provide liquidity in just one single range. Since all your liquidity is just going to change into the other token when the price changes, so the value of it is not really changing that much, and you're maximizing your liquidity in the pool to the point that you're going to get as much fees as possible. So, and then you just have to hedge your position on the other side through a centralized exchange or some other place. However, you can get a short on the position that you've taken. So I think that was a very profitable strategy actually in the first half of 2021, because you could see it on the fees. Like those fees were huge because people were making money. Like everyone's competing for those trades. So, but it requires you to be an expert in doing this type of work. So you have to know how to program. You have to have also the infrastructure for it and enough capital to deploy. So it wasn't no longer a retail play anymore at that point.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
that's actually got me to building GammaSwap, because I felt like, well, I mean, this is like defeating the purpose of it. Blockchain is supposed to be for retail mainly, and now it's becoming an institutional product that only professionals can use.
Yeah, maybe Daniel, it'd be helpful to explain a little bit about like what JIT actually is and how, yeah, it's a little bit more profitable than I guess passively providing liquidity in V3.
Oh, right. Yeah. So what I was referring to, they call it just-in-time liquidity. So when someone makes a trade, say whatever trade they're making is going to Uniswap V3, you can maximize the liquidity that you're providing if you just provided a one single tick. So say you provide only $100 worth of liquidity, but because you put it in one tick, it's like providing $10,000 worth of liquidity. So then because you're providing about $10,000 worth of liquidity, you get fees as if you were providing $10,000 worth of liquidity. So you're a bigger percentage of the pool in that tick that you provided liquidity at. So you get most of the revenue there. And if after the trade happens, if the price didn't change much, you still have the same amount of money, but in terms of the other token now. And yeah, so you can just hedge that position on a centralized exchange until you revert your position to the other currency that you want to hold. And yeah, so that's how you can maximize your returns in Uniswap V3. But the problem is that when you have to compete against other people trying to do the same thing, and the network fees end up going up. So there's this relationship actually between the network fees and the transactions that are happening in Uniswap V3. This also used to happen in Uniswap V2 when liquidity mining was very profitable. Like in the beginning, like middle of 2020, it was very easy. I mean, just provide liquidity, you're making money. But then by the end of the year, it was already, it was getting pretty tight. That even if you were providing liquidity, just it wasn't worth it unless you're doing it with like 6 figures or something like that because of the transaction fees.
Right, and not to mention, every single time somebody jumps in with the JIT liquidity, it actually hurts all the other super passive LPers who don't do this, right? Like there's actually another stakeholder that's actually massively impacted. And even though the JIT LPers compete against each other just for that, single trade there, that one range, folks who have been LPing in this pool forever and a day took that, their return have been reduced by these JIT LPers.
Right. Yeah. So that's why Uniswap V3 has become more of an institutional tool. So that's why that's what got me to building GammaSwap, because I thought that I mean, Uniswap V3 I thought was awesome, that you could passively provide liquidity and make monies, like a type of ETF that, it's essentially making money on shorting volatility, which is the same thing you do when you're market making. Since you're buying more as the price is moving and you're betting that it's going to reverse to the original price. So, yeah, I agree with you.
Right.
I have one more question before we go to the marketing question I had. Daniel, do you think JIT is a real problem? Because in his talk at ETC this year, Dan Robinson made the argument that it actually isn't as big of a problem as people make it out to be, that it's actually like a very, very small percentage of all trades on Uniswap, a very small percentage of like LP, like trades made against the LP are actually like JIT. Like, do you think JIT is a real problem?
I think JIT is a problem if you're a passive liquidity provider. I mean, the fact that he's saying that it's not a problem because it's only a small percentage of trades, but it depends also. Is that small percentage of trades the trades that actually count, or the trades that don't really matter because they're so small that they're going to pay a very small amount of fees? So so that's not a. So I don't think what he was saying is true. That it's not really a problem. It is a problem.
I think it's, if for traders, it's great. For traders, it's actually like beneficial to them because they're getting a better price on their trades. But, you know, for like the little bit of the time where like the JIT happens, like for a passive LP or that's in it for a while, it becomes a problem eventually. But there's like finer nuances to that argument here and there. But onto the marketing question. Devin, what is your plan to get the message and narrative of GammaSwap out there? I see the impermanent gains chat artwork going on. Big fan of that. So what else do you have in store, and what are you trying to do with your message?
Yeah, I think it's a good question, because I think especially if you dive into like the math of, I mean, I think it's like the same thing with AMMs, right? Like AMMs are extremely complex products, and they're marketed to be these passive things, which I don't think the current product scheme is really going towards. Our hope, like, we don't think Uni V3 is necessarily a bad product. We also don't think it's necessarily a retail product. We think it's a great product for projects that are trying to market make, like everything's super capital efficient for them. We're probably going to market make an issue with V3 for that reason. We think it's great for institutions because they can trade like a little bit more like a club. But if you're a passive LP, it's hard to be profitable, especially if you can't hedge like your position. So we're hoping that we can build a way for retail LPs to be passive and still expect to be profitable on average. The reason I think we can do that is because right now AMMs are a one-sided marketplace for volatility. And so, a lot of people use like the yield of an AMM to measure the profitability, but that's kind of wrong. Like, you should actually be looking, according to the Black-Scholes model, at like the actual volatility. And that's when that came out in the 70s, people started being able to price options and derivatives volume skyrocketed. And so I think, if you actually look at implied volatility, there's only one action that's happening. People, as they provide liquidity into pool, they sell and implied volatility goes down, but no one can buy it. But if we enable that other side where people could buy that volatility through like options types of products, then essentially we'll get something that looks more like TradeFi. And TradeFi, implied volatility has overstated historical volatility 83% of the days since 1990. So 83% of the days it's been profitable to sell volatility. And so we're hoping that, something will look like that, similar to DeFi. And then also, we'll also have, like tokenomics, for example, like especially like new projects, they're super volatile, low floats, and not that much swap fees yet. And we often see, projects renting liquidity and providing super high tokenomics, which can sometimes hurt the project's like long-term viability. So we think in some ways, like projects are probably going to want to market make on different types of AMMs, but we think, Uni V3 is going to look more like a dark pool where like institutions are going to trade and pay a fee to trade for better execution and lower slippage. And we're going to be maybe more like a Robinhood or a commission-free exchange where our DEX would be feeless and retail can still market make and expect, not always to be profitable. There's no free lunch, but on average, they'll probably come out ahead. So that's our hope. And the way we're marketing it, I think, is the way options have kind of been marketed in TradeFi, really just simplifying the experience, allowing people to get what they want, right? A lot of people want to get leverage on projects they're bullish on or bearish on. And so that's something we can do. We can now allow people to get leverage by borrowing that liquidity out on any token in any AMM. So I think that's kind of just how we're marketing it as a new type of options protocol that's Oracle free. And also LPs are going to be better compensated for their risks, because in the services, the borrowing services or the option services we're providing on these other AMMs, so not including our native AMM, essentially as an LP, besides the smart contract risk, there's no additional risk to LPing on GammaSwap. And the yield should always be equal or higher, because essentially, you're making all the swap fees from that underlying AMM. You're still exposed to the permanent loss, but you also get the borrow fees from those longing the volatility on the other side. And you can imagine, if for example, like an event like the merge, maybe you don't know where ETH's going to head, but it's going to be volatile, and you're an LP in like an ETH USDC pair. Even if you're not hedging, you're going to earn more fees from all that demand to long volatility, since that interest rate's dynamic. So you'll at least be a little bit better compensated for that risk that you're taking. And then, we kind of, in that way, we don't have a full cold start problem. We can kind of connect into these other AMMs and hopefully get some of that liquidity. So that's the biggest thing we've been marketing. And then, using a lot of the language, as we kind of mentioned, that Uniswap and other AMMs have pioneered, like impermanent loss, impermanent gains, and so connecting to that terminology people know. So even if people don't exactly understand what gamma is, they'll know that they're long volatility and they're taking the opposite bet of impermanent loss, which I think is pretty much essentially what being long gamma is.
Okay.
Hearing things like Oracle free and hedging risk is music to my ears. Like really, like that's what DeFi needs.
Yeah, but I think it's time for us to take off the training wheels and let's go deep into this, because options are one of my favorite products. I used to trade equity options and ETF options back in the day. So can you walk me through what a user journey looks like from just a passive LPer, and then on the other side, someone who's looking to long volatility as well?
All right, I'll take that call. I think that question first. All right, so if you're providing liquidity through GammaSwap, the experience is very similar to providing liquidity in any AMM pool, like Balancer, for example. Right? You have to provide both tokens that you're providing liquidity for, and the ratio of the AMM pool. So from your perspective, it's the same thing as if you're providing liquidity in your favorite AMM, whichever it is, Uniswap, Balancer, SushiSwap, right? Now, for someone that's taking the other side of that trade, that wants to short the liquidity, they provide, actually, we're redesigning the user interface. But essentially what's happening, or the way it is right now in our testnet, is that you provide 2 tokens of that pool that you're going to long the volatility on. And then you decide how much you want to borrow, how much liquidity you want to borrow from the pool to long it, and that's pretty much it. So then you essentially get a straddle on that liquidity. So if the price changes, then your what's normally known as impermanent loss becomes impermanent gain for you. That's your P&L curve, and you're paying our interest rate, which is the yield that the pool is charging to that's paying liquidity providers, plus another interest rate from the utilization rate of the pool. So how many LP tokens have we borrowed from the pool to give you this position? So you essentially owe an LP token if you're long in volatility, an LP token that's accruing interest rate on top of the trading fees from the AMM. From the liquidity provider's perspective, they're still providing liquidity as normally as they would, sure. And they're getting the trading fees from the AMM plus an interest rate from the person that's long in the volatility.
Okay, so my question now is, I am a person who wants to long volatility into this USDC and WETH pool. I have to provide collateral in both USDC and WETH in order to borrow the LP token. No?
Yeah, actually, if you want to have a pure straddle, then you do.
Yeah.
But if you just want to have a leveraged long position or a leveraged short position, then you only really need to provide one, because the rest of the collateral is going to come from the AMM. So your collateral is actually going to be made up of the two tokens, but in that case, you would only need to provide one. You just have to have enough collateral there to be able to open the loan and make sure that it doesn't come under collateralized.
I see. And what collateralization ratio are you guys targeting?
So because the interest rate is on the invariant, and the invariant doesn't change with the price. So no matter what the price is, if somebody like flash loans trades on the pool and changes the price to 100x, that's not going to affect the invariant. So the invariant is not affected by the price. So the only thing that affects it is the interest rate on the pool. So if there's 1,000% APY on the pool, for example, it will take about 24 hours for that 1,000% APY to consume 3% of collateral. So we're thinking that we can probably do a leverage loan-to-value ratio that's that high, like 97% of the loan. So
wow.
So we're targeting to be somewhere very tight like that, so we can provide people the most leverage, because the risk is different in our case.
97%. Damn.
Wow, that's quite hot. It's really capital efficient.
Yeah. Oracle free, capital efficient. You're checking all my boxes right here, guys.
Yeah, I think we're going to see it be competitive. One, from a capital efficiency perspective, like you'll have to put up basically less capital to get a certain amount of leverage. I think also when we first open up, there's a lot of liquidity in the pools and not that many people taking the other side. The IV is going to be so low and the interest rate's going to be so low that it's going to be really cheap compared to like other, centralized exchange options or other DeFi options. At first, go ahead.
I want to get into the leverage part a bit. Can you explain more about how leverage will be integrated into GammaSwap? Will it be possible for, if I want to be DGen, can I go like 20x at some point on that leverage?
At some point, we're aiming to go for that leverage, especially when we integrate with other platforms like Balancer, where we can give you more one-sided, like your direction of your trade can be more one-sided. So we think we can go up that high.
Nice.
Yeah, but for you, 50-50 is probably going to be a little bit lower than that.
Yeah. And something else I want to get into. Kiet, do you have any? Well, Kiet,
I did.
Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to follow up on that. So let's just kind of walk through this leverage user journey as well. I put same pool USDC WETH. I put collateral as USDC. Then now I'm able to borrow this LP token. Could I then turn around and sell all of the ETH in this LP token and then collateralize more USDC and then borrow more LP token and just rinse repeat this up until
no. So you're talking about looping, right?
Yeah. Yes.
No. Because then so all the collateral that you take out is stays in the platform to make sure that the loan is always over collateralized.
I see. Okay. So then there's no looping functionality here then.
No loops.
Got it. Okay. If I just want to short more, then I have to deposit more USDC myself.
You're getting a very high collateralization ratio. Like
97%.
Like 3% controls like $100, for example. $3 controls $100.
Good point.
But shouldn't leverage be easy to provide because like only the fees come from the interest rates?
Right. For that reason, that's the reason why we can leverage things more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it.
You'll also, if you're borrowing, you also have to pay the swap fees that would have been accrued had you been LPing. So I guess to be very specific about the P&L, if you're an LP in GammaSwap, it's going to be, swap fees minus impermanent loss. That's like a normal AMM, but you also get the borrow fees from those holding volatility, and those are dynamic because we're going to have a dynamic interest rate similar to Aave. And then on the long gamma side, it's impermanent gains, which is the positive version of impermanent loss, minus the interest rate, and then minus the swap fees you would have accrued had you been LPing in the liquidity that you borrowed.
Yeah, and how are those interest rates calculated?
So the interest rate formula is depending on the utilization rate, but it follows a type of exponential growth. So the more the pool is utilized, the more the interest rate spikes up, and it's more sensitive to that. So it's not like Aave that's just a linear rate. This is actually exponential, and it can max out at like around 1,000%.
1,000%. Got it. Wow, got it. 1,000%. That'd be pretty crazy. I wanted to go into a little bit about the whole landscape of options, of options on chain compared to options, in the real world, like with Bybit and whatnot, because in the traditional finance, options are so much more in market cap than spot trading. I mean, so much more activity is in options than in spot trading. But on chain right now, spot trading dominates compared to options, and options really hasn't had that Uniswap X times Y equals K moment yet. Why do you guys think that is, and what do you guys think will get options to the level that it is in traditional finance?
Okay. So in traditional finance, options are more. They're bigger than the spot market, just because essentially an option, a derivative contract, is a combination of a spot and a loan. So you can replicate any option with the underlying asset in a loan. And since for that reason you can leverage things out more, and for that reason then leverage the derivatives market, it always ends up being much bigger than the spot market. So that hasn't happened in DeFi yet, because there hasn't really been a good alternative for it. Most platforms that come up with options, for example, they're depending on an oracle, and they also come up with more complex designs for the protocol. So that's why it's difficult to do this type of stuff. But we think we find a very simple solution that, because of its simplicity, is very robust. And for that reason, I think it'll gather more usage for that reason, and also because it's trustless, it's permissionless. So, and I think that's an advantage over centralized platforms, because you don't have to trust them. So, for example, FTX, for example, right? A lot of people trusted them with their money, and then it's all gone now, right? Yeah. So in our case, you don't have to trust it; it's all there. So you can look at it in the chain, you can see where all the funds are. So, and that's been the promise of decentralized finance all along, also, to make things trustless in blockchain. So you're not supposed to be using CeFi if you have DeFi.
Yeah, I think another issue too is just the infrastructure. I think liquidity is very fragmented, and a lot of these DeFi option protocols are all competing for liquidity, which compared to TradeFi right now is kind of like scraps. And I think when you get these really liquid markets, they become kind of hard. They're not priced well, and they become kind of hard to trade because they're so liquid. So a lot of people have asked us, why are you building these kind of these services on top of other AMMs and then your own AMM? And are you going to keep those services on the other AMM? And our answer is kind of yeah, we want it all to be there, because one, if we can solve the implied volatility problem in AMMs, like the pricing of the liquidity, and if we can actually serve as a way to aggregate liquidity across AMMs, then other DeFi protocols could come and compose on us, and they're going to have less cold start problems, and the platforms could potentially function better. I think a lot of it too is just where bridging has been. I think once bridging is solved really well, and especially when like rollups solve like these latency issues, like composing will be a lot less expensive from a gas perspective, and then the composing will be easier from latency perspective as well, right? Because if a transaction, I don't know, takes 13 seconds and you're doing that through multiple platforms, it's hard to create like an options protocol off of that. So I think those are kind of the other issues that are also kind of like underlying DeFi right now.
Yeah, I want to go back to what you said about protocols and the cold start problem, because a lot of these protocols, they launch your token, they just like launch it like plainly on Uniswap V3, and then the vault, it may pump because that's what happens in like in the first like week or 2 weeks, and that's when the most fees happens, this and that. But then it just like dumps, and like there's really no way for like the protocol, if they're providing their own protocol and liquidity, or users to hedge their risk. And so by helping with the cold start problem, do you mean like giving protocols a way to like hedge like their treasury, basically their protocol own liquidity using GammaSwap? It's like, okay, we're providing liquidity for our users, and at the same time, we're hedging the risk of providing that liquidity using something like GammaSwap.
I think both. Yeah, I think I originally meant it as like, okay, let's say I want to, create a platform for like straddles or calls or puts, and I'm not connecting to another platform. I'm just doing my pools, and then crypto's super volatile, so I think you might expect that more people would want to buy those options and sell them, and so that'd be like a huge problem. And then those options are super overpriced, and then people stop wanting to buy them, and it's just difficult to track liquidity. Like I think it's just hard to completely, liquidity is already a hard thing to achieve, and so if you're going to completely bootstrap it and it's inefficiently priced, it's going to be really hard to scale that liquidity as well. So I think that's part of it, but also, I think another problem in DeFi, just generally, now that I'm thinking about it, attracting liquidity, is a lot of these projects, because of poor tokenomics designs, like don't do well in the long run. You know what I mean? And their supplies like ever inflating or changing, versus maybe something like stocks, which is a little bit easier to like predict. And I think a lot of that is because if you want to attract liquidity to market make for your token, and it's super volatile, and you're not getting many swap fees, you have to compensate people for that risk to actually attract more liquidity. So you end up doing something super inflationary, but then your token, goes low. No one else wants to buy it. Your treasury stops accruing value. And, even if you had a really cool idea or something that, crypto needs, just because of that tokenomics, it's going to be hard for you to attract like capital in the future. So if you look at like TradeFi, the reason implied volatility is higher, or people are buying more calls and puts than writing them, is because people are risk adverse. They want to buy insurance on their spot positions, on other positions. So they're buying that volatility to hedge their exposure, those options. And so I think, if you have a way for new projects, for people without an oracle to hedge their exposure to new projects, more people would be willing to provide liquidity, and you wouldn't have to necessarily, pay so much money for people to come into your pools and provide liquidity, because people could naturally hedge their risk, and maybe it's more positive EV to provide liquidity. So I think both of those things are maybe like the cold start problem.
Okay, yeah, it's interesting with options, because I've heard that with too, like either the options are too expensive and no one buys them, or they're too cheap and they just get like gobbled up and like arbed on centralized exchanges, and there really hasn't been that like middle ground. And the same thing kind of happened with like dexes on chain. Like it was either like there was just the slippage, or like the range between like buy and sells, which is too high, and there was like no middle ground. But Uniswap, because it was oracleless, it was able to like actually get like a medium, and with like something like GammaSwap, it could get that like that sweet spot range as well.
Yeah. So I really think the future of DeFi is less competition for liquidity and more competition like on like innovation or like new ideas. But I think in the future, you're going to see more protocols kind of, there's going to probably be few layers, and those liquidity layers might even connect, but they're probably going to be connecting to some other liquidity layer instead of competing, because I think it's not a scalable way to track liquidity.
Yes, wait, can you go back on that? You think DeFi in the future is going to be less about liquidity and more about innovation? Can you go into that point more?
Yeah, I think it's just right now with like all these different chains and the fact that a lot of protocols choose to bootstrap their own liquidity instead of, because of the issues with composability, like on mainnet, like gas costs and latency, it's been kind of hard to compose. But I think as we see the infrastructure get better and bridging get better, we're going to see more liquidity layers connect. And DeFi protocols, instead of competing for liquidity, are going to compete, just based on other areas. Like they won't have to focus so much on liquidity; they can focus on the innovation of their protocol. And I think that's when we're really going to see like DeFi skyrocket, because you could launch, have some connection to liquidity out of the gate, and then whatever protocol, whatever type of product you're trying to offer is going to be more efficiently priced out of the gate. So I don't know. I don't know if Daniel has any thoughts on that, but that's something I've been thinking about a lot more.
I mean, that's one of the things actually I touched on one of the Medium articles I wrote regarding all this. So how this would benefit the whole marketplace. And I think this is not even just an issue on DeFi. It's also an issue on CeFi. You look at options on low market cap equities, for example, like small caps. They're usually really thin. All the liquidity happens at the money, and out of the money, there's no liquidity. If the price changes a lot, you have to wait till somebody starts writing options on those the new price. So this is a problem that plagues all financial instruments, I think, right now. And I think in the future, as more of finance moves towards blockchain, then this is going to be this is solving a lot of problems. So you're going to be able to be a small cap and be able to provide options, insurance on your market, and not have to worry about these liquidity issues that also happens in CeFi. So overall, it's a net good for like everybody, society, everywhere.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see, because like I think like the two like biggest, like some of the two biggest markets in DeFi in general are stablecoins and bridging. And like with the bridging issue, like, and also like the two most controversial because of obvious like past things that have happened with both. But like imagine we get to the day where like bridging is trustless, seamless, secure, safe, and quick. And once that like day comes, and like we'll see like when or if that day comes. So let's say it like comes, and just like bridging is just super seamless across chains, like omni-chain becomes a thing. Like tokens aren't wrapped, they're just like minted and burned and stuff like that, and it becomes seamless. Then liquidity won't be an issue anymore. And then it's just like a matter of, like you said, innovating and just innovating. What will be interesting to see is like the ARBs that are going to be done through like that cross-chain bridging. And I've seen like a few projects that come across my plate that are trying to take advantage of like these low liquidity L2s, and like saying like, okay, there's obviously growing demand on them. How can we like make a profit and arb off them? Similar to how like back in like 2017 or 2018, everybody was trying to arb off centralized exchanges. The same thing is happening, but just on L2s and different chains right now.
Yeah, exactly. I think the day bridging solved and stable coins, a lot of it's regulation, to be honest. But when I think when stable coins prove their security and bridging solved, we're going to see DeFi outcompete CeFi. But yeah, I think it's mostly, besides regulation, it's mostly like you were mentioning, those infrastructure issues that have been really hindering DeFi.
Yeah, Kiet, you had a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, do you guys mind if we roll back to, GammaSwap specifically and the internal mechanics? Because I've just been sitting here and just kind of ruminating in my own head. Is like, obviously, let's just use the V2 as an easier example. Like, if you LP into a V2, you pretty much are just selling a straddle at whatever strike price it is. Let's just use ETH, for example. You're at the $1,000 strike price, right? Easy at your moment of LP, that is the strike price that you kind of sold the straddle at. Now, on the other side, let's say I'm someone who wants to long the volatility here. Do I get to pick my strike price by just changing the balance of collateral type, or must I kind of wait until the market, for example, it moves to 1,200 now for me to then decide to take on a long vol position here? Like, is there any control in the strike prices or anything like that?
Yes, you can change your strike price by changing the collateral ratio.
Sorry, could you repeat that? You literally, like, my internet just cut perfectly right when you started talking.
Yes, you can change the strike price by changing the collateral ratio.
Got it. Okay. And then if, let's say I didn't put any collateral on the ETH side and I only did collateral on the USD side, what would my strike price be in that situation?
Okay, yeah. So if you're able to provide more collateral if you already provided more collateral on one side, and then you're rebalancing the token ratio towards that side, so then your strike price is increasing towards that side. So, for example, if you had $100 and one ETH, for example, say that was the collateral ratio. Mm-hmm. Now you added $200 more of say $50, right, as collateral to the US dollar side, and now you take out the loan, so you initially have the strike price of 150. So now if you change some of your ETH for more, say like $50 more of USDC, now you have $200 of ETH and 0.5 of ETH. So now you have, what's that, like a $400 strike price?
Got it. Okay, so I would just keep on adjusting my strike price as I add or reduce collateral on either side.
Right.
Yeah, we're thinking of making that easier in the platform to like visualize as well, like having kind of like a leverage slider and then easily seeing your strike price, because some of the math behind this can be quite complex. So
I was reading Daniel's Medium article as kind of prepping for this call, and I was like, oh yeah, any average Joe would totally understand all these math on this page, but let me ask him, because
so dude, like I've been looking into options since the beginning of the year, because it's just like one of those things of like, okay, like what's the next thing in DeFi, like, and options seems like one of those things that could be like the next meta. And like, if options were going to become a thing, what would it look like? And I think we're seeing that shape up with things like GammaSwap coming out. And I'm curious, there's some, when you guys tell me about GammaSwap, it reminds me of another Oracle free options platform that's coming to market, which is Panoptic, which I believe is exclusively using Uniswap V3 to perform its types of options on chain. What do you guys, have you guys heard of Panoptic? What do you guys think of them? How is it similar to GammaSwap, and how is GammaSwap different from them?
All right. We've heard of Panoptic, and I'll look a little bit into it. It is different from GammaSwap in that we're basing this whole thing based on UniV2, so over the whole price range. And one of the main reasons for that is that we don't want to be able to, we don't want to have the problem running out of liquidity when the price moves out of the range.
Okay.
So I think that's been one of the major innovations of Uniswap, of the AMM with a geometric mean invariant. Like Balancer can do the same thing also, so you never have a liquidity problem. And something like UniV3, once you get out of the price range, now liquidity is much lower, and so price moves can be gigantic at that point. But the thing is that you were only getting paid when you were in the range. When you're out of the range, you're no longer getting paid. But the problem is that once you're out of the range, your risk is even much higher because the liquidity is lower. Mm-hmm. So that's why that's why it makes just things way more complicated. A function to be able to model all that is also much more complex. And and Panoptic is going with a different approach to do all of that. And I wish it the best of luck with that, but I think it's a more complex way of doing something that I think is much easier to do with the geometric mean in Uniswap V2 or Balancer.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
I think the other thing we've been kind of touching on too is so I think UniV3 is interesting. It's super interesting innovation, and then obviously longing the volatility on that's cool. We plan on having our own implementation. I guess our vision maybe is more contrarian, I guess. I think a lot of what we think is that, there is a new type of AMM product. I think retail is getting crowded out of market making. and we feel like we need to create a new AMM to serve retail. And so I think that's one of the areas we're most excited about, is this new type of AMM that's not incentivized by swap fees at all. It's just purely a two-sided volatility marketplace. Because if you think about what could happen if you have an AMM like that, is that people are withdrawing liquidity out when they long volatility, but the yield that we've been calculating based on if you calculate the implied volatility of the AMM and you assume it's the same as historical volatility, which is even conservative compared to TradeFi, then most pools you get 50 to 100%, sometimes up to 200% yield. So although there's times where the liquidity would be withdrawn out, if you're arbing the yield, there should actually be more liquidity in this type of, if the model works, in these type of pools. So we think it's a way for retail to still contribute and then potentially attract more liquidity as well. Because also, people can buy that insurance, and it would create higher yields for LPs. So I think that's that's the bigger vision. But we also want to provide this service on other AMMs and then connect that liquidity as well. So I think we have like similar ideas of what an LP position is, like selling volatility. But I think the way our solutions are very different.
Yeah, and I think the key with you guys is a way for retail to passively earn in this new landscape where things have gotten so complicated, especially with Uniswap V3. Like it's just not friendly to retail at all, and like that's probably one of the biggest critiques of Uniswap V3. So you guys see this problem. It's like, how can we get like the common man? Like how can we get that spirit of like DeFi summer 2020 like back, and like we can get it back with something like GammaSwap coming up?
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole point of blockchains was to serve the retail market. Like the institutional market, big banks, they didn't have a problem with trust with the financial sector, right? The problem with trust was with the retail sector and the institutional sector, because there's a difference in bargaining power between them. So having a trustless platform does solve a lot of issues. And if you're going to have trading options or any other product, I mean, the trustless is for retail, so blockchain is for retail. So
honestly, I don't love the word retail, because I feel like the word is like people that haven't been in like the traditional circles, which I guess is retail, but also includes like per se sophisticated investors that have like that might be outside the US, or like might not have gotten like the same opportunities as people in TradFi. And TradFi is kind of this like closed door, closed gated like old boys club where like they get access to these like options, quote, no pun intended. And so they never really needed something like blockchain to come along. But like something like blockchain, like it's just like ripe for opportunity for like anyone that has the knowledge to take advantage of it, and it's there for them.
Well, I mean, you see the same thing happen in other industries also, like media, for example. Like before, it was just TV, so that's how you got your news, or the radio. Now it's the internet, social media.
The internet. Hell, this podcast. Yeah, we can just like throw up a podcast on YouTube and Spotify, and boom, get an audience, and they can hear us go deep on on-chain oracleless options. That's the beauty of technology.
Yeah. With Twitter and YouTube, everyone's a journalist, and with GammaSwap, everyone's going to be a market maker.
I like that.
I like that.
And anyone could be a market maker with GammaSwap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think.
Yeah. Go ahead. Oh, I was going to ask.
No.
Okay, you go ahead.
My internet's a little slow, so you probably respond, and then my response is delayed. No, I was just saying, I think that's the biggest reason we want to focus on retail as well. Because, I think that's, if you look at stable coins, how like DeFi is being used now with like all these countries where there's, super high inflation, they want access to US dollar, but, they can't because of their banks or whatever, or you like sending money to people in other countries. Maybe the banks aren't allowing that, or you have something like what happened in Canada with the truckers, banks being closed down. Like DeFi or crypto is like power to the people, just like internet was. And crypto is like the next big innovation. So we want to focus on like the average person instead of, I guess, more complex products, which are cool too, but can crowd out like the average person.
Yeah, definitely. And I was Oh, Kit, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to ask, like, how do you guys feel about like other multi-asset AMMs? Because if it's just asset A and B, it's kind of easier. But let's say something like Try Crypto or some of the other balancer pools where there's like a ton of actually even uneven weighted pools as well too. How does the math kind of change there?
All right. Yeah. So I like the unequal weighted pools because you get a different return profile.
Mm-hmm.
Now the multi-asset pools, like if you get past three, like I can visualize up to what a three-dimensional object looks like. So
Mm-hmm.
two tokens looks similar to a parabola. Three tokens, all right. So it turns into something like a cone. Now four
Mm-hmm.
tokens,
Conic,
I don't
yeah.
even know what the hell does that look like, right? So
Imagine
four
what
tokens,
GLP looks like.
yeah. Then five dimensions, all right. So I think that's just making things too complicated. Like I mean, we can write a whole bunch of
Yeah.
different things and make it as complicated as they can. Like they do that in music too, with adding just more notes. But then it doesn't really simplify your life. I mean, you're trying to
Mm-hmm.
make things simpler
Right.
so people can use it.
I mean, in some ways, I think it's cool because if you don't have something like GammaSwap or you just don't want a long volatility, like the more tokens you have in the pool, it's going to reduce the volatility because then, it's not like one super volatile asset and one stable or one stable. It's easier way to reduce volatility, which I guess reduces impermanent loss. But yeah, I think in some ways it makes the math and these products more complex. And then for us, like when we think about building on protocols, it's very hard for us to create like a gamma marketplace on that because I mean, no, it's really hard to visualize how that collateral is going to affect your position and actually reflecting the math and in the leverage.
So, guys, everybody wants to know what collateral types off the bat are going to be accepted on GammaSwap, and how are you guys going to approach DAO to DAO partnerships?
All right. I'll answer that first on the collateral types. So we're permissionless, so we can pretty much do any token pair. So and we don't plan on restricting it, so people can do launch whatever a gamma pool on whatever pair that they want. So we'll be supporting everything. Then, but of course, I mean, like on our website directly, I mean, yeah, we're going to probably promote mainly the most popular tokens since that's where most of the liquidity is, anyways. Then on the partnerships, DAOs, I defer to Devin on that.
Yeah. So I guess we were talking a little bit, or the question of composability always comes up. So we have these GammaSwap ERC20 tokens that represent either the underlying liquidity pool, if we're doing like a Uniswap balancer pool, or our own native pool, and they function the same as a regular ERC20 LP token. So I think from a BD perspective, how we're first approaching it is getting on like these gauges for these protocols that are incentivizing pools. If you're incentivizing a balancer ETH USDC pool. Well, let me think. Actually, maybe like an ETH Frax pool, like Frax is incentivizing that in balancer. Then incentivize the same pool in GammaSwap because you might actually end up getting more liquidity, and then you're hedging your risks because it's on a few different AMMs. And then also new projects when they launch liquidity mining programs, we'd like to be either the first AMM or a wrap pools being part of that service. So they could either release these pools or maybe they even release vaults that are automatically hedging IL for their liquidity providers and provide some token incentives on that. So just including us in those liquidity mining programs. But I think beyond that, once we have some of these vaults that are automating IL, like maybe doing some DAO treasury management, if you want to acquire more ETH USDC, but maybe you don't have someone on the team that can market make for you, or you don't have the bandwidth, just deposit in one of our vaults. We'll help you out, and so you could get more risk hedge yield, or maybe diversify into another token if you'd like. And then building out structured products, I think, is going to be super important. So we've already been chatting with a few other products, but for example, a lot of people who have TradeFi backgrounds love trading with expiries just because they're familiar with that strategy and those payoffs. So incentivizing protocols to build those type of calls and puts off of us other types of vaults. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be even new products that we haven't even thought of that could potentially be built. Then I think what's really cool is if we have our own gauges, we're not only going to see like things like the curve wars between projects, but we even see wars between different AMMs, like Curve and Uniswap are fighting for their same pool, their same stable pool, and they're incentivizing to compete each other for more liquidity in general.
Your own gauges. When GammaSwap token?
It'll be live when we launch on mainnet. So we're going to be doing liquidity mining, potentially gauges as well. So I think that's when things are going to get really, really interesting.
So for your tokenomics, are you guys going to have like a VE system then? Is that what you're thinking? Or are you going to have something else?
Yeah, we're going to probably be part of the real yield narrative. It'll be subject to DAO vote. Part of that's honestly regulatory arbitrage on our end. But yeah, we definitely subscribe to like the real yield. I think gauges are really interesting for AMM. So those are two things I think we're definitely looking to potentially implement.
Yeah, I mean, but with like how your tokenomics look like what do you mean by real yield with your tokenomics?
Yeah, so we're going to give part of the revenue, probably
a part of the revenue. Oh, okay, got it.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay. Instead of token emissions, you're going to do rev share.
Well,
or you can do
we'll
like
have
a little
some
bit of
emissions as well. Yeah, we'll do a little bit of both because I think inflation when it's not controlled or not expected or not understood is a bad thing, but I think some inflation can be a good thing for new project. Like a lot of layer ones are inflationary. Sure. So
the growth
in the beginning of our life cycle, I think it will be. We plan to stop emissions after like 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I guess like I'll clarify my question a bit. Like for the GammaSwap token, do you guys see yourselves having tokenomics similar to Curve and Frax, or more similar to something like GMX, where they have multiplier points and stuff like that, or is it something completely different?
It's probably going to be some combination of that. So we're still thinking through that. Yeah, I think what GMX did is pretty genius. Essentially, they had emissions, and they were predicating it on the fact that when emissions decline, there'd be enough TVL and volume that the real yield would be similar to those emissions. And so I think in a lot of ways, the way they designed their platform is genius. So definitely looking at what they're doing, and then I think what Curve's doing is genius as well. And I think that's something we'd potentially like to implement as well, especially when converting or connecting into these like different AMMs and different pools, like different protocols. I think our token holders could benefit a lot from that competition.
We never got to ask this, but how does GammaSwap make money?
How does GammaSwap make money? It's a good question.
So we charge a protocol fee on the borrowed liquidity. So the stuff that's borrowed from the platform, there's an interest rate charged on that. Not the part that comes from the AMMs, but the part that's borrowed from the platform. So the interest rate of the platform, we charge a percentage fee on that, which is about 10%. And then besides that, there's plan launching also vaults that also have a management fee on top of them, which are similar to ETF products. It's management fee for managing the liquidity provision on your side. And the problem later on, even more products on which we charge also fees.
Got it. I'm sorry, you said you charge 10% on the interest rate that's being like the borrower's interest rate, or where did that 10% come from?
The borrower's interest rate.
Got it. Okay.
So what borrower is paying, we're taking a 10%.
Understood. And then you said there's a management fee on top of that?
No. So there's a management fee on vaults that are managing liquidity, similar to Yearn, for example, that manages your allocation. Yeah. Well, we'll do something similar.
So for the vaults, we'll probably do, I think Yearn does 2% management, 20% performance fee, so 20% of the yield. So we'd probably have something similar. So I think for vaults, we're probably planning on building them out for like very decentralized currencies like ETH, BTC, maybe even other projects that are pretty decentralized like Frax or other projects that are like larger market cap. For newer, obviously we can't. It would be very difficult for us to build all those type of vaults out. So we're hoping that we'll incentivize projects to build on us when we have enough revenue, but also that maybe new projects, when they launch their token or launch liquidity programs, that they might also do that in the form of vaults, so that it's easier for their for their LPs or token holders to provide liquidity without having to hedge that risk like on their own.
Understood. And then the 20% performance fee, you're only going to take whatever performance above what the native swap fees were going to generate anyways, right? Or are you guys going to take 20% off like the whole thing?
Probably the yield.
The whole thing?
We'd have to look at we were just going to model it off earn, so we have to look at more. But I think they just do it off the total yield. So
yeah,
that's probably what we would do.
Yeah, I thought it might be more. I'm sorry, I just want to finish my point. I thought it might be more attractive if like you could offer this product where it's like, hey, you're going to earn more because we take care of the IL for you. So you won't have this IL like negative component. So you essentially get to keep 20% of the IL savings that you provided for the user. And the user gets to keep 100% of like the trading fees and then all like the native real yield. And you're just adding on top of that. I think that's very, very attractive.
It's a good idea.
Yes. So the issue is that I mean there hasn't really been enough thought put into how you would track. I know what you're talking about. You're talking about a watermark on the yield, right? Yep. So so there hasn't been a solution out there for implementing that on DeFi yet. So that's something that we still have to think about on how we're going to do, and that's partly down the road also. So that's why I mean we're going to try to be as fair as possible to the community and make the product as attractive as possible. But yeah, I mean implementation wise, like we have to do what's more realistically possible to do. So right now, I mean the only solution that we've seen doable is the earn solution where they charge on the total yield. But if we can make it so that we can implement the type of watermark, yeah, I mean that would be ideal, of course. So, but there's still that will require more research.
I think that's something cool about the real yield narrative or giving back some of the revenue to token holders. Is we look at something like GMX. I think GMX has some of like the highest fees.
Yep.
But a lot of time, one, the UI is really simple. It's an amazing trading experience. Like no slippage. Like that's awesome. But a lot of it too is that if you're a token holder, you probably use GMX as your primary trading platform, and you're kind of willing to pay some of those fees because you know it's going back to you or the other token holders. And so I think that's like an interesting component as well. But yeah, like Dan was saying, I think there's things we want to do to make our products more attractive, but we're going to start with the simple. So just we can release the product, the battle tested stuff, make sure everything's secure, and then, build on top of that and innovate on top of that, similar to a lot of these other DeFi protocols. They launched the V1, V2, V3, whatever.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, how is GammaSwap going to be composable with other DeFi protocols? Like, have you guys thought about that?
Well, what do you exactly mean by composability, though?
Like, what will I be able to do with like GammaSwap LP tokens per se? Like, what are some things like how will GammaSwap be a money Lego in DeFi with other protocols? Okay,
all right. So providing liquidity into GammaSwap is the same as the experience is the same as providing liquidity into Uniswap. That you're still getting an LP token, so you can deposit that LP token inside another platform for liquidity mining, like we used to do back in 2020. So that's one aspect of composability on the providing liquidity side. On the logging volatility side, you're getting an NFT which you can transfer to other people. And if you want to do something like all right, so you want to turn this into a low volatility position, so that everybody provides liquidity into GammaSwap, and they borrow liquidity to keep it for the whole price range. So you're essentially buying a straddle and want to have and you want to turn that NFT into an ERC20 token, you could theoretically also do that because that NFT is transferable. And of course, it would require another smart contract to control that NFT. But that's another thing that we can do, and yeah, so that would just another Lego in the whole system.
Got it.
Like the way I'm thinking of GammaSwap's composability, Dave, is like instead of it being on like this LP token level, I think it's more on like the actual product middleware level.
Okay.
That GammaSwap can insert itself and creates crazy structured product like the vault.
Yeah.
The super simple, like, no IL vault, for example. The LP token from this vault could probably, or the ERC 1, 2, 4, whatever that number is. That vault token can be used for somewhere else as collateral, because now it's like, IL was super hard to calculate, but now in this case there's no IL, so you have two assets and you can price two assets very easily, right? So I think that kind of adds to the composability overall.
Yeah, I like how you framed it as like this middleware, this tool, more so than like Uniswap LP tokens, which is like the end all be all. Like, oh, like where can we put the Uniswap LP tokens? Like that's it. But like with GammaSwap, it's like, oh, like we can actually like use this to like hedge, literally.
Yeah, it's redefining liquidity providing. Like it really is.
It flips it on its head.
Yeah, like if you really want to go full naked short straddle, you could. It's available right now for you. Yeah, but if you want to cover up a little bit, you could use GammaSwap. That's what I'm excited to see, like a little bit further down the road, to see how GammaSwap's product creates more structured products. Because the moment you told me that I could adjust the collateral and create completely different like profit profiles, I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So you could theoretically have on like a bunch of like, bull call spreads mixed with a bunch, hopefully later on with some expiries, you mix it in with some calendar spreads too, right? So you create a really unique profile that way.
Daniel, were you going to say something?
No, I was agreeing with him. Yes, you can create spreads with it.
Yeah. So speaking about down the line, also everybody wants to know what's on the GammaSwap roadmap. Like what's happening right now? You guys are in testnet, I believe, and do you have any special announcements for us?
Yeah. So we're going through our audit right now. I think we're in like the second week of our audit with Halburn, so that should be completed soon. And we're also working on an adapter for Balancer. So mainnet is going to be UniV2, Sushi, Balancer. And then about a month later, we're quickly going to build out an implementation for UniV3. Then more of our vaults, partnerships to build structured products. And I'd say mid to end of the year, we're going to be launching our own native AMM. Once people kind of understand the model, we get some liquidity, some traction, we'll have that feeless stacks. And then I think, especially having all those pools in one platform, it's going to be really easy to arb between like different pools. So I think like Kay was saying, I think we're kind of seeing as GammaSwap as this like middle layer where other protocols can compose. I think that's an important thing as well, as having all of this liquidity available for other protocols to compose and also build out like unique strategies. So that's how we've been thinking about our roadmap a lot, is kind of one, proving out the model, and then building out this whole liquidity layer. And then also any AMM, any project can incentivize whatever they want through us and build whatever type of strategy they want on top of us.
Yeah. And how do you guys see yourselves partnering with protocols like Frax? Like, I think of two things off the bat. One, simply is just gauges. And two, you could integrate with FrxSwap and have FXS options, FPI options, FPIS options. Like, imagine having an option against the CPI. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, so we definitely super attracted to Frax. It's a project I've been following for a while. So I think the first thing we're going to start out with is gauges. We may end up building some vaults with Frax, or incentivizing maybe other protocols that want to build vaults with Frax on top of our platform. And then, FrxSwap's really interesting. I know there's a decent amount of TBL, especially for the Frax types of products. So I think that's something we'll look into more. our code can technically work with any AMM, and there's some AMMs that we've kind of leaned against. For example, not saying we'll never have a Curve implementation, but with Curve, with a lot of this liquidity being locked up, it makes it hard to integrate, and then obviously a lot of it being stable, unless you're predicting a DPEG, there's probably not going to be a ton of demand to long volatility. But I think with what I've seen from FrxSwap, it could be something interesting for us to integrate down the line for sure.
I mean, also public service announcement, a Frax base pool could be paired with non-stable pairs as well. And now you could use that with GammaSwap. And now you will have no IL in your Frax base pool pair of non-stables. Plug.
Boom.
Cool.
Yeah, there you go. Going into that a bit more, could we lock liquidity, like FrxSwap liquidity, in GammaSwap contracts? Is that possible? Because like that's one big thing that like Frax always tries to do is have locked Frax because it helps with the peg.
Okay, all right. So depending on what you mean, one way is more difficult than the other way. So if you mean if there's already liquidity locked in an AMM, and you want to keep that liquidity locked inside the AMM and then supply it through GammaSwap, so GammaSwap can take advantage of it, then you're saying the GammaSwap is supposed to also remove that liquidity that's locked to pull the reserve tokens out of it. And so that's a more difficult implementation, and it probably involves a lot of other risks. So it's probably doable, depending on how that's built. It's probably doable, but I'm not. Yeah, I mean, I can't say 100% sure that it is doable. Depends really on how the AMM is built, how the liquidity mining contract is built. Depends on several other factors. But now, what is definitely doable is if the liquidity is provided to GammaSwap into the AMM, then you can lock up the GammaSwap LP token that represents the liquidity inside the AMM in another liquidity mining contract or whatever other contract you're using to get some reward or like a gauge, for example. You can definitely do that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think the important thing, of course, for GammaSwap is for people to be able to open those long Gamma positions. So I think an implementation's possible as long as, well, if there's demand for volatility, of course, and then we can actually withdraw that liquidity out for the underlying token. So we'd have to look into exactly how it would work with Frax, but I think maybe if that's not the current implementation, it's always something that we could, if these gauges are going well, we could propose on governance a slightly different implementation, explain our reasoning why, and then hopefully implement it. So a lot of these things are possible. It's just there's nuances that we have to be thoughtful of.
Yeah, I think there's a lot.
I feel like Dave and I are like in a kid in a candy store right now, just asking all the wish list items.
I love doing interviews like this because it's like live BD, and it's like public live BD, kind of like how there's like discussions and forums and online, but we're just doing straight up in video and like asking the questions that people want to ask. And I want to end this off with one more question, and then we'll go to the our lightning round that we usually have. So give us like the ultimate like bull scenario for GammaSwap. Like, what does Gamma world domination look like? Like DeFi, supplants TradFi. That's the world is ultimately on chain. GammaSwap is like the leading way to hedge this in your world of extreme volatility. Like, what does the Gamma world order look like?
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, we have a lot of other products that we want to launch that we think are going to be even more influential. I think there's a lot to be said about what can be done with GammaSwap and volatility trading. And there's stuff that still hasn't been explored because this type of product doesn't exist in CeFi. Like, there's never been like the AMM itself, for example. There's never been something that like has infinite liquidity, like a platform that has infinite liquidity. And in the case of GammaSwap, something that as the price changes, the gamma doesn't converge to one. It's still decreasing. I mean, it's going towards one, but it never really becomes one. I mean, like the delta. I mean, so the gamma never really becomes zero. So the delta never really becomes one. It converges to that level, but doesn't. So there's a lot of things that you can do with that they haven't been built in CeFi, so you're going to be able to do new things in DeFi that you were never thought it was possible in CeFi. And for that reason, probably come up with some really cool solutions for like new financial products that solve problems that people have and that haven't been solved before. And look, I don't want to give too much away because that's supposed to be something that we're still working on and like, but it'll come down the road. I mean, besides the feelers deck, so like something we think is substantial.
You can give us the hints next time.
All right.
Give us the alpha next.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of just adding some more color there. That's the ultimate bull scenarios. We create products, and we avoid the issue of like liquidity fragmentation that we've seen in CeFi, so that DeFi, it's something that's usable by all people, accessible by all people, and that because of not even this fragmentation of liquidity within products, but within like different governments and like countries with their different government currencies, we see DeFi totally, outcompete CeFi. I think that I'm 100% sure that's what's going to happen. I don't know exactly what the catalyst is, but I think if GammaSwap's successful, we'll be one step in aiding towards that direction, which is something I think that drives us a lot.
A foundational pillar in a self-sovereign, permissionless world.
Before we jump into the lightning round questions, I want to double click on this, what success looks like for you guys 1 second more. Is there a one key metric or one KPI that you guys, or like you, Devin, specifically, are looking to drive forward? Like, is it TVL, or is it number of gauges, or is it number of vaults being opened, like number of ILs saved from the world?
Saved from the world. Yeah.
I mean, for GammaSwap, I think TVL is not the perfect number, but it's like good enough. So I think, if we see TVL in GammaSwap that's competitive, with like different AMMs, like a leading TVL number, I think that would be super awesome. I think bigger picture though, like the biggest thing that DeFi needs is more users. So particularly if we can just increase the amount of like wallets and users active in DeFi, I think that's probably, even if it's not necessarily the best metric to contribute to the success of GammaSwap or measure the success of GammaSwap, I think that's what's going to help DeFi, explode in the future. So I think that TVL is probably the metric we're looking at, but that other metric, growth in user wallets, activity, things like that, like I think that's what we should be aiming for just as a space, is increasing the amount of people active in our industry. So I'm hoping we're one step to that growth of users in DeFi.
About that, I would say that since we're trying to solve a problem, and the problem's been solved once the yield on AMMs is substantially high, that it makes it profitable to provide liquidity again. So, because I think it should be, people are naturally risk averse. So implied volatility is supposed to always be higher than historical volatility, at least most of the time. So if that happens, then right. So then we solved the problem really, and we were the first one to solve it. Will be probably the biggest product out there. So I think everything from that just translates into that we did a good job. We executed well. We solved the problem.
Well, I like both your answers. I like them both.
Amen to that.
All right, let's switch gears into our lightning round questions, and these are just a set of questions for us to get to know you better as humans and like friends and builders. So let's start with you, Daniel. Here's like, what was your virgin crypto experience? When did you first touch a blockchain? And sexes don't count.
Do you mean like, and which AMM?
What was your first transaction on chain?
Well, yeah, I bought Bitcoin. That was the first thing I did. I mean, I think everybody, like back then, this was back in 2013. The only way you could get crypto was through, first you get Bitcoin. And you had to go to Coinbase. There was nowhere else. There was also Mt. Gox in Japan back then. But it was very difficult to get an account there back then. And then they went bust soon after. So even
Yes,
Rugs
and also
again.
local Bitcoin.
Local Bitcoin.
Yes,
Localbitcoin.com. I'll meet you at the corner Starbucks.
Yes. So then
Are these
after
questions
that,
for both of us? Because I have a
Yeah,
really good
yeah.
answer to this question.
These questions are for both. So Devin, what was your first virgin crypto experience?
Probably using the Silk Road with Bitcoin. I wanted. I thought it was awesome to just be able that there was this marketplace that anyone could have access to. It's totally encrypted, and it was a great experience because you basically decentralized voted on trust, and you didn't even know any other people, but it was a good way to measure it out. Obviously, now that's changed a lot, and I hope crypto can go out of the illicit activities, but I'm naturally like very libertarian, and so that was really attractive about crypto to me is that it's just controlled by the people, and so now hopefully more professional ways trying to contribute to that kind of that narrative or ideology.
Was the marketplace a good experience, or were the products on the marketplace a good experience? just curious.
Both were a good experience. Yeah. No, but I just thought it was so cool that I could get this wallet, get money in it, and then transact online in any way I wanted. And the transactions weren't super fast, but anyone could give each other money. There was no intermediaries. I just thought that was
for sure.
Super cool. And I think that's still the most cool thing about DeFi is that you remove intermediaries. It's like the internet in a lot of ways. It just connects people, and you don't have to rely on anyone else. Just decentralizing the world.
Yep. And let's jump to our second question: is what is your favorite off-chain touch grass activity? What are some of your hobbies and interests?
Should I wait for Daniel to come back?
I know you could just go and ask him again.
I'm right here.
Okay. Off-chain touch grass activity. I don't know. The easiest one for me is just like lifting weights. That's always been kind of an outlet for me. But one thing I love, even though I suck at it, is like running because you can do it like anywhere.
Yeah.
You can like see kind of like the world around you. You get great endorphins like after it. So I love exercising, and I think, when working really hard and just on whatever, like crypto or just in life, it's always important to remember to touch grass or do what's gonna, give you that kind of rush because otherwise you can get kind of
lost in the sauce.
In the zone. Lost in 24/7 crypto.
Yeah. Next question. What would be some of your advice to your younger self? Let's say your younger self that's 20.
That's a good question. I think like taking risks is really important, but taking like the right types of risks. And I think I was lucky to get in early to crypto, but in some ways I wish I leaned into that more early on. Just because I think if you can see like the potential of an industry, like it's asymmetric upside. Like if it ends up becoming the next big thing, like it's a huge payout. And worst case, it doesn't become the next big thing, but at least you're working like something you believed in and got a lot of great experience from. And I think regular software is cool, but crypto has always excited me more. So I wish after graduating, instead of going into Web 2, just found there were less opportunities available just because it was a smaller industry. But I think I wish I just would have contributed more to crypto early on. I guess that's the stereotypical answer, but like I saw it as a risk, but now that I've gotten older, I just realized if you can identify like well-weighted risks, it's better to lean into those risks because that the failure is minimal. Like worst case scenario, you get another job, you go to another industry, but the upside is huge. And especially if you believe in something or really excited about something, it feels less like work.
Yeah.
Yep. And the last question on my end is like, if you weren't in crypto, what would you be doing professionally as a career? Like a dream career.
a dream career? Like, money matters or money doesn't matter?
This is about you, not me.
Yeah. I mean, it's something I've always loved doing, and now I do. Well, I did as a career and love doing as a hobby was personal training. I started the powerlifting club in my college and was really excited to help people out. And one of probably my most proud accomplishments when I graduated, we had set like 20 state records, which was just like absolutely insane. Yeah,
Nice.
And was personal training as a career a little bit. End of high school, like the summer before college and in college. And so, yeah, I guess if money wasn't as an issue, but I still wanted to work outside of crypto, because I think crypto's extremely exciting. I think that would be an area just because it's something I love doing in my free time. And yeah, I think like helping people achieve their goals is really cool. So just contributing to things I believe in. I think, I think physical health is very important. I also think like kind of like very libertarian. So like libertarian ideologies are really important to me. Like, the power to the people, less control for the government. Those are just things I deeply like believe in. So I guess I'm lucky to be in the industry I want to be in, but that's probably the other thing that, I'm deeply motivated by is just, the power, I think, of physical fitness to like, boost self-confidence, boost your health, boost the way you feel.
I like that. CrossFit meets crypto fit.
Couldn't agree more.
Something like that.
So Daniel, my second question is, what is your favorite off-chain touch grass activity? What are some of your hobbies and interests?
So actually, since I moved to Florida, I was actually working out a lot. So I was going to the gym a lot because there's a gym across the street from me. So I was just doing pretty much that. I was like going to the gym like 4 or 5 times a week for like 3-4 hours. And then I got involved with GammaSwap. Now I can't go to the gym anymore. So that's.
Oh, really? I thought you were at the gym just like bench pressing. How do I hedge these deltas?
Yeah,
Oh.
So what a pull-up bar, everything. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I guess working out, I guess, is one of the things I do a lot in my free time.
Yep. So Daniel, what would be some advice to your younger self? Your younger self, let's say he's 20 years old. He's looking at you. He's like, Daniel, I what should I do? Like, is it going to be okay?
Well, actually, I'm quite satisfied with everything I was doing back then. Well, what I would say that advice at one point in my life that I would give to myself was back in 2011. I first heard about Bitcoin, and I thought this thing was great. You should buy a lot of it. And then I got into a fight with my girlfriend, and I kind of forgot about it.
Many such cases.
Fights. So guys, like that answer of like, oh, I wish I bought more X has always. Dave, I think we need to qualify and be like, that cannot be one of the lessons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next time.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now, last question from me, Daniel, is if you weren't working in crypto professionally, what would you be doing as your career? And it can't be in finance.
Okay.
Or math related.
All right. Yeah. So I have to go back even further then because
we gotta go back.
I've pretty much been working in finance the whole time. So since I graduated from college, and when I was in college, that's what I was interested in. So I've been doing what I wanted to do since then. Crypto is just an extension of that became like, this thing is awesome. Like it's going to revolutionize finance. I wanted to get involved in it. But if I hadn't chosen the finance career, then back then when I was my late teens, I was doing martial arts a lot. So I was doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and probably if I have been doing it since I was a kid. So if I hadn't gone the finance route, I'd probably do something like the UFC or something like that.
Oh,
whoa!
We got one personal trainer and one UFC fighter.
Daniel's actually
that's it.
Daniel's actually a black belt, so don't mess with him. If he didn't go into finance, he'd be a UFC fighter, and he already has a black belt.
Ridiculous. No, he's going to make IL tap out for sure.
Oh, that's a great line.
IL's officially tapped out.
Yeah. And on that note, like, guys, thank you for coming on. This was such a fun, fruitful I learned podcasts. I learned so much from it. This is something I'm definitely going to have to like rewatch and re-listen again. Read up on my alphas, deltas, neutrals, delta neutrals, gammas, and everything. Thanks for coming on. This was truly a treat.
Thanks for having us on.
Thank you, everyone, for watching this episode of Flywheel Pod. We had on the GammaSwap team with Daniel and Devin, D squared, coming in with
boys.
The Gamma Boys with all the hedges, cutting around, making sure we're staying safe in a whole world of volatility. Kiet, final thoughts on this episode?
My brain hurts.
My brain hurts.
It really does. It was so dense, and it was just like it really gets your creativity kind of running once you kind of grok what they're trying to build. Like you see how this would really drastically shift the landscape, and just completely change the way it looks.
I think my favorite part of the episode, or one of them, was we were basically doing like live Frax BD on air. It's like, what if like you have a GammaSwap pair for FrxETH Frax integrated into FrxSwap, and people can hedge their IL there. Like, I mean, I would expect that integration to happen because, Uniswap V3, they said it was more than possible. And also like a funny story. I was talking to a family friend that actually like is an options broker, and I was like telling him about this. I was like, yeah, actually like interviewed some, these founders of this on-chain options protocol. And like, I tried to explain it to him in like the first 5 seconds, like, that's really cool, Dave. I'm just like, oh man, if only you could understand. I'm curious if like we like show this interview to like traditional option traders and brokers and people, like what they would think of this kind of technology being built.
I think they wouldn't believe it because
you wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, you wouldn't believe it.
And if you want to not only believe but get more knowledgeable about DeFi, get more knowledgeable about all the latest edge cutting developments happening on chain, you know what to do. Make sure you hit that like button, leave us a comment below. Make sure you follow us on Twitter @FlywheelPod. Join the conversation in our Telegram @FlywheelPod. You can follow me on Twitter @DeFi Dave 22.
You can follow me @0xcapital_K.
And we'll see you next week.
Peace.
Everything said on this episode is not financial or tax advice. This channel is strictly for educational purposes and is not an investment advice or solicitation to buy or sell any assets or to make any financial decisions. This video is not tax advice whatsoever. Please talk to your accountant and do your own research.